We live in a time where stress and mental health struggles are reaching an all-time high. Today I have with me Vic Lebouthiller, the founder of My Outcomes, which is an organization that is pioneering innovative programs to prevent mental health struggles by building resilience, or for those who experience a struggle, overcome it through the use of advanced neural, social, and behavioral science. Welcome to the show, Vic.
Welcome. Thank you, Randy.
Who is My Outcomes? What is it?
Well, My Outcomes is a group of clinicians who are researching what we call advanced behavior, neural, and social sciences. And we take these findings and we put them into products and services for those to prevent mental health issues through building resilience or overcoming a mental health struggle.
And how did you end up in this business, Vic?
Well, I spent 12 years as a management consultant working in businesses, and we noticed that the workplace stress was just escalating year after year. And it became a big issue with Canadian Mental Health Commission, business owners, HR managers. So we began to observe that, and back in 1990, provide services to build resilience, to help people learn how to deal with stress. And so that's how we got our beginning. I then moved into publishing. I had a real abrupt change in my career and got into publishing, and we started to publish information on the brain's neuroplasticity and how the brain can change. Prior to that time, we saw the brain as hardwired. And so we started to publish information, and it was well received, and there was a real need for it. And people were receiving that need. And then after working in publishing, I decided I wanted to go back and be more connected with people. It was a bit of a disconnect from being with people. Working in office all the time. So we opened up a 24-bed inpatient facility, and we're still running it today, where people come in to deal with mental health struggles.
Anxiety, depression, PTSD?
Yeah, those are the primary ones. Those are the big ones.
So why the increase in stress and mental health today? What's going on?
Well, that's a big question. We're, as a health science community, we're still trying to determine that. But three big ones that we know of. One of the big ones that's really surfacing in the last decade, maybe, it's been out since 1995, is the ACE study. The ACE is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences. An adverse childhood experience is basically someone who's had multiple ACEs as a child, and when they come into their adult years, they're just not ready to deal with life challenges. And so they get stressed over issues. Chronic stress, undealt with, turns into a mental health issue. So we're now starting to see the validity of that study. More than ever, it's gaining widespread global acceptance. And an ACE is simply verbal abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect. And so those are a significant factor to people susceptible. The next one that's really emerging quickly is loneliness. Now up to 49% of North Americans are suffering from loneliness. In fact, the UK has
they've made a minister of loneliness.
Minister of loneliness, yes.
Like they've created a whole department in their government.
Studies are coming out, some saying as high as 90% of men have no one to confide in. So pain held in increases, pain expressed is reduced. So we need connection. We're built for connection. And we become lonely, become highly susceptible. And then of course the one that's really becoming a concern is screen time. We're replacing connections with screen time. And although screen times could be valuable in educational reasons, sometimes it doesn't replace the things that you receive in a relationship. So those are three significant factors. I mean, many others, but those are the big ones that we pay attention to.
Elaborate for me on this concept of the neuroplasticity of the brain. What are you talking about?
Well, up to somewhere after the year 2000, research started to be published by the Frontiers of Brain Science, who are really declared that the brain's not hardwired. So most of us know someone who's been depressed, and when you're depressed, you go to a doctor and they say, you better go home and hunker down and learn how to live a life of quality as much as you can with depression. And that just truly isn't the case anymore.
It's not a life sentence.
No, it's not a life sentence. The problem is getting treatment is not easy. But the brain is neuroplastic and can change. And people like Dr. Norman Deutsch, if you YouTube him, will show you the science that we can change the brain. And his thesis in university was traveling the world and finding people actually creating empirical evidence that the brain can change. And it's quite a phenomenal piece of work, where today now a widespread group of people are believing, yes, we can overcome a mental illness. Yes, we can learn how to build resilience, grit, to not live in so much stress. The second reason probably is big pharma has a stranglehold on the market. Okay, when someone gets depressed in most Western nations, the first line of defense is go to your doctor. And your doctor, the first thing he does is put you on meds. Meds are good, but meds were never developed for long-term use. Meds were developed for short-term use, but because there are no other secondary lines of support for people, they are staying on it. And so we're in a real double bind because we have to get people off these meds eventually into dealing with what the core drivers are, which you talked about earlier.
Medicine and counseling, those are two areas that, in my understanding of basic, dealing with depression, there's two approaches, meds and counseling. So tell us about the products that you've developed. You've developed 3 different products with your company, My Outcomes.
Our first product is My Outcomes, which we talked about. It's an inpatient facility where people come for a month and then they go home and have a 2-month aftercare program. So they have an app on their phone and they're connected to the counselors and the people that were in their same groups. So they're really staying engaged when they go home, because perhaps the #1 issue is staying engaged with people, being connected.
But is that like a group therapy thing, or what are they doing in the retreat center?
Well, alive, it is group, but it's not just therapy. We do that every day. It's individual therapy, it's group therapy, but it's more just engaging. Okay, when we lose the engagement with people, and we don't confide, and we don't laugh, and we don't play, and we don't feel connected, that has a major impact on a person's thoughts and emotions. Thoughts and emotions are not designed to be stuck inside swimming around. I mean, we need to express them and share them. As I said earlier, pain held in increases, pain expressed is reduced. So at the Live Center, we focus on engagement, we focus on cardio. Of course, people are starting to hear the new Harvard study that came out, I think about a decade ago, showing that those who do regular cardiovascular activity stand the chance of overcoming a mental health issue by up to 35%. Now that's significant. So sedentarism is becoming a big issue in Western society. The next one is nature. We're seeing now new studies showing the impact that nature has on people. So we have cabins up in the mountains and take people, we do solo programs and get people just connected to nature. And then, of course, group and individual therapy, as I said.
And nutrition. You're also addressing nutrition, which is...
gut health has a big link to brain health, so we're dealing with that as well, too.
So that's the one part of your company. What are the other 2 parts of your company?
Our second product is My Outcomes. My Outcomes is a clinical program. We're partnering with Dr. Scott Miller and his work and really trying to commercialize measuring the effectiveness of therapists, counselors, coaches, anyone, social workers, anyone who works with someone one-on-one. And it's a system that measures the effectiveness, measures the clinical outcomes, and reports that to the therapist, the client, and the clinical director. And then from that, we can determine what type of training that therapist needs. So we have e-learning programs for the therapists. And this is based on all the most advanced training that's in the marketplace. So we been running that now for about 5 or 6 years, and that product is sold in 20 different countries and translated into 6 languages and used by universities to train students and large and small mental health clinics. Our third product is the Resilient Mind, and that's a product that we're currently beta testing. And basically, the Resilient Mind is a product that is designed to help people build grit and resilience. So the objective of that is to make advanced behavioral, neuro, and social sciences affordable and accessible to all. So it's a web-based program that a trainer gets trained in. It's a trainer-trainer model that they can host it and run it in businesses and keep the cost down. So we can provide 18 hours of continuing education for an employee that they can do at lunch hour. And then during the week, they meet for 7 weeks for 75 minutes. During the week, they're pushed out 2 homework assignments, and they do those assignments. They have 3 times a week. They're really becoming conscious of their stress level and learning tools to bring their stuff down. We use sort of a scale saying you're regulated or you're escalated. So we all know what getting escalated is. So what if we were to create consciousness when we are escalated and have a tool belt on where we have tools to learn to bring ourselves back down? So that's the essence of what that program is.
And it's just regular companies, large and small, that are realizing that mental health is important with their employees. And so just talk to me about how that is going out into the business world.
Well, the new Canadian Mental Health Commission report says that 1 in 5 people are struggling with a mental health issue. Other studies are showing 49% struggle with stress.
49% struggle with stress.
42% of people are struggling with fatigue. And so think of a workplace. Being creative, being productive is all about having healthy, happy people in the workplace. And so owners never before have been really focusing on, how do I make my workplace fun and positive and encouraging and uplifting? And when you create those kind of cultures, you create a highly productive and a creative environment.
So with that third product, you can plug that into any company?
Yeah, mostly corporations are using it right now. Corporations that are having high levels of stress. There are the big ones like surgery, clinical teams, air traffic controllers, social workers, law firms. Those are the ones that are really aspiring to this kind of stuff, and that we're beta testing with these groups.
TV production companies.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of stress.
Exactly.
I want to come back to My Outcomes, the product for evaluating the effectiveness of counselors. Because it seems to me like that's a big issue. How do I pick a counselor? How do I know whether one counselor is better than another counselor?
Yeah. And that's a good question, and this is where we felt we could make the most impact. The work of Dr. Scott Miller is very valuable in that we're now finally able to find measuring systems to measure the effectiveness of therapists. So, because not all therapists are effective, not all carpenters are effective, not all lawyers are effective. And
but with the carpenter, you have a way of finding out, like how did it turn out?
Might be too late though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is, unfortunately, when you're working with counseling, often it's done through an insurance company or maybe a private person you select, and you can ask them if they use a measured system to measure the outcome of this process. It's becoming more and more popular. So, but it is difficult. It is difficult because that is where a person should go if they're having a mental health problem. The issue with counseling is often it's not enough. It's like a level 2 solution for a level 5 problem. And sometimes you need more than one session a week. That's why we do inpatient programs where for 30 days they're immersed in recovering a mental health issue. But counseling often is for prevention and for someone struggling with depression. So it can be both depending on the severity of it.
So you told me that as many as 85% of counselors could be more effective. In other words, it's only 15% that are really effective. So you have an actual software system to measure that. Can you just explain briefly how it works?
Yeah, how My Outcomes works is when you're going to therapy, if you were coming to see me for therapy, I would pass you my smartphone and I'd say, Randy, how you doing? Why don't you just answer these 4 questions? It'll help me to understand where you're at.
So I answer on the phone.
Yep.
And they're like,
put them on a scale.
It's not, I'm not writing out something, I'm just picking 1 to 10 on a scale. So it's a numerical.
And I look at that, and that really helps me understand where you're at today and how I need to help and support you the most effective way I can. I need to know where you're at. At the end of our session, I'll hand you the phone back, and you'll do 4 more questions that really determine what your experience was with me. Did you feel engaged? Did you feel connected? Did you feel heard? Did you feel understood? Or there's some things we dealt with to help you? And those answers to the first and last 4 questions go into algorithms, and they're brought back to me, you the client, and the clinical director. And that is a measuring system. In therapy, because of the Confidentiality Acts, we've never been able to go into that therapy session. Now with this instrument, you can.
So you're measuring how that particular client progresses over time in their therapy. You're measuring the effectiveness of the clinician. But then you're also measuring the effectiveness of that clinician with all of his clients over a period of time. And so this is all fed into a software system and
algorithm, yeah.
Yeah, and so does that mean that clinicians end up getting kind of rated on how good they are?
Yeah, their effectiveness is rated. So it is a threatening thing. It's not something that therapists are welcoming. Clinical directors are buying it, and it is the emerging trend for therapy. So in 5 or 10 years, most therapists will be measured using our measures or others that are out there.
And there's a whole new market for that for your company, because this can work for coaches too. Like, this is a huge industry now.
Yeah, coaches, therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, anyone who works one-on-one with a person.
So the big clinics are adopting My Outcomes because they want to get the measurement and they want to get the grants and so on and so forth. But what about the independent clinician or the independent business coach or personal coach? Why would they potentially plug into My Outcomes?
Well, individual therapists that work for themselves typically want to be their best, and so they would welcome this. So we have a large group of individual therapists that are using our measuring system, and they promote that as well too, that we use measured systems to determine our effectiveness.
So, and someone using My Outcomes, if My Outcomes can help determine, I guess, where they're strong, where they could be better, so you have an online training program for the therapists?
Yeah, when they sign on for our measures, there's a training program that they do online, and there's a support desk. So it's a different way of doing therapy, so there's required initial training, not much, but people need to sort of be introduced to this new way of how they're going to embrace therapy. It's really giving the client a voice, and me drawing you into that point, empowering you to say, hey Randy, I really need you to answer these questions and be candid, because that helps me know how to help you more effective. So as a therapist, I have to be effective at bringing you into higher levels of candor.
And if you're not that good at it, you have some upgrading that can be done. So in other words, the system all works together. It's not just identifying you're a crappy therapist. It's like it helps. You've got a way to address that.
Absolutely.
And what's that called?
Well, that's called FIT, Feedback Informed Therapy. It's an e-learning program where they go online and they do 12, 30, 40-minute lessons. They're designed to do when there's a cancellation.
So, okay, I'm on the My Outcomes program, and it turns out the effectiveness, my effectiveness is being measured, and it turns out I'm not as effective as I could be. Now what?
Well, you now know that. And you know not just where you're effective, because it's specific areas. Maybe you're effective in these areas, but maybe these two areas you need to increase your effectiveness. And so that's where the e-learning will come in. Your clinical supervisor will know how to support you. And the e-learning is a 12-module program.
And you say e-learning, this is developed by your company, My Outcomes.
Yes, it's an online e-learning program. It's designed to fit into a cancellation, because therapists have several cancellations a week. And so they can just fit that in, so I don't have to do it at home. And it takes 30 to 40 minutes to complete, and they get tested, and there's 12 modules, and they go through this, and basically it's an online e-learning program.
And they know which one of the modules to take based on the feedback they're getting from the My Outcomes.
Well, right now we have one module, but we have others coming out. So
I see.
We're just completing that.
So Vic, you're a business guy in the healthcare sector. Like, you're not a doctor, you're not a psychiatrist, a psychologist.
Well, we employ those people, and I think they're the key link to all of this. The knowledge of what needs to be done and the skills of how to do it come from our clinical people and all the contractors and associates and colleagues we work with. But we believe the implementers of it are going to be business people. Business people have high degrees of perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, never giving up, finding the money, making it happen, doing the impossible. And that's what business people typically have good track records of doing. And we have a business team that are constantly cutting through red tape, trying to have policy changed. When you look at big pharma that's got a stranglehold on mental health, and you try and dip into that market, that's like coming against Goliath. And so a big part of our organization's energy is trying to bring mass adoption to mental health. We need to deal with mental health in a more effective way. And there are countries that are doing this. Denmark, for example, the Scandinavian, Baltic countries are having significantly less mental health challenges than we are in some of the other Western nations. So it's not an easy thing to come against. So we spend, it's a difficult thing trying to see these new products and programs implemented. However, there's early adopters that are always wanting to try things. And we believe perhaps in the next 3 to 5 years, the Western world at least will move into mass adoption, realizing that our citizens need to be resilient. We need to be able to deal with stress and recognize when we have it and have places to go. And when we do fall into a mental health struggle, where do we go and what do we do about that? There's not a lot being done. If as I said earlier, a mental health struggle, you just go to your doctor and he's got one tool in his toolbox, which is pharmaceutical meds. There's nothing wrong with those. They're just not a long-term solution.
The happiest country in the world, I think it is, there's a couple of countries that claim to be happier.
Denmark, a recent study showed Denmark.
Yeah, so what are they doing differently that we're not doing in America?
Well, lots of groups have went there. Oprah went there and studied it. I mean, it's different things, but we know that they spend more money per capita dealing with mental health issues. Perhaps more work-life balance. You know, when you have a broken leg, if you get it treated, more than likely you can heal it and you can have success. Most physiological, medical conditions can be dealt with. And mental health has a lot of similarities. When there is a mental health issue, we can deal with it if you receive the proper treatment.
But the problem is sometimes, unlike a broken leg, we try to pretend it's not there.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. If you have a loved one with a mental health issue, you don't know what to do. And of course you try to help them and you don't succeed, and you know, it's discouraging and you get frustrated, and all of a sudden they don't want to be helped anymore. So it becomes a taboo issue swept under the carpet. And
so there's still a stigma attached to saying, I'm depressed, I'm stressed out. Stressed out is kind of you can say that, but if you start saying you're depressed, there's a stigma there.
Sure. If I go to a party and everyone says, and you say, how you doing in front of everyone, I'm not going to want to sound like a loser and go, oh man, I had a really hard day and I'm really stressed and I really need to talk to someone. I go, fine. So, I mean, I think that I was at a mental health conference, an international one, and there was about 15 speakers over a 3-day period. Every speaker they chose had a mental health struggle. And we're talking like the ministers of health for Australia. She got up and she shared her mental health, and the whole theme was breaking the stigma. So it was encouraging to see that I don't think there's very many people that have really excellent mental health. We all struggle with unhealthy thoughts and emotions, and we need to learn how to talk about it as a society. And as we do, I think we become more free. And I think we're moving in that direction. The whole work of Dr. Daniel Goleman in 1995 by the book Emotional Intelligence birthed that whole movement by talking about your emotions. So me and you were raised in a society where big boys didn't do that. And that's changing very quickly. And it's actually quite exciting seeing the shifts. We were notified recently that there's 2 schools in British Columbia that are teaching emotional health from grade 1 to 9.
Wow.
And so they're starting to teach this to children, because Dr. Daniel Goleman's work says that EQ, emotional quotient, is more important than IQ. And so we're starting to pay attention to that in education systems. So it is an exciting day we live in.
So I just heard today that the actual life expectancy of Americans for the past 3 years, for the first time in the last number of decades, has actually started to come down. And the research says that part of it is the opioid crisis, but another part of it is the increase in suicides. And so that's amazing that it's actually having, well, you know, while medical science is having us live longer, we're actually killing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Never before have we, our organization, in the last maybe 15 years, seen governments, bureaucrats, business leaders paying attention to this mental health crisis. And we are, you know, starting to mount up and see the seriousness of it. There's more funding. There's many products like ours. So we're pretty encouraged to see that, you know, society often waits till we have a crisis and then we start doing lots about it. So it is an exciting time.
Well, we're so grateful that you're in the business you're in and that you're driving solutions in the private sector. Vic, thank you for coming on Biz 101. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Randy.